right. You know what's weird? I'm going to tell you what's weird. I find that I tend to take much better care of other people's stuff than my own stuff. Is that weird, or is this true of other people too? It is true. I find that when I'm driving someone else's car, I'm extra cautious when I'm driving, and I pay super close attention to the speed limit, just like I do in my car, but more so in someone else's car. You know, when I stay at somebody's house, I leave it spotless. I'm really careful to leave it really, really clean. When I borrow someone's book, I make sure I don't crease the pages or spill coffee or on it. You know, I don't even know if I own a coffee-free book myself. You know, but it's true. I mean, I take such better care of other people's stuff than my own. And this is true of you guys as well. You guys do this also? I think it's probably true. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? That when we know that someone has entrusted their stuff to us, we know they're counting on us to take care of their stuff, we tend to feel more responsibility to treat it with love and to treat it with care. I guess that makes sense. Do you guys know that Stewardship Sunday is grounded in that truth? Do you guys know that? I mean, just think about it for a second. Nothing at all, nothing that you and I have actually belongs to us. Every breath you breathe in and breathe out, every friend that you have, every family member, every moment has been given to you by God and will return to Him. Your job, your retirement account, your abilities, your personality, all of it has been designed for you, specifically for you, by a creator who had you in mind for it. And from the moment that He entrusted it to you, He's been asking this question. So, what are you going to do with my stuff? You know, one of the things that we don't often think of as a gift from God, but it really is, it is our story. It's our experience with the presence of God, especially our experience with His Son, Jesus. You know that one thing that you have that is absolutely unique to you is your story. Nobody in the world has your story. Nobody has Caitlin's story except her, right? Nobody has your story except you. Nobody has Dennis's story except him. No one has your story except you. So for the last month, we've been on a journey here, looking at our individual stories, our personal stories, and looking at what happens to those stories when Jesus comes into them. What happens to your story when Jesus enters the picture? Does your story change? Does it change a lot? Does it change for the better? Does your story now reflect Jesus as your Redeemer, as your Savior, as your hope? Does your story reflect Him? And if so, what are you doing with that? I mean, what do you do with that story? What do you do with your hope? What do you do with it, with your faith? Is your faith and your hope just for you? Think about that. Think about that. Is your faith and your hope, these gifts from God, are they just for you? Jesus told a parable one time, and it's in Matthew 25. I'm going to read it for you. If you want, you can follow along with it, but I'm going to go ahead and just read it and put it on the screens. Matthew 25, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you two questions at the end of this, okay? So you need to pay attention. I'm going to ask you two questions at the end of this. This is how it goes. Jesus says this: again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last. Dividing it in proportion to their abilities, he then left on his trip. The servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest the money and earned 5 more. The servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, "Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest. I've earned 5 more." The master was full of praise. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest. I've earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. Now I'll give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here's your money back." But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it." Then he ordered, "Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Interesting story, huh? So in my translation, the master leaves bags of silver in the hands of his servants. 5 bags, 2 bags, 1 bag. In the original Greek, do you know what the word is that he leaves? Anybody know what it is? He leaves talents. In the original Greek, he leaves talents in the hands of his servant. A talent was a measure of money. Okay? So bag of silver is a good translation. It's not a bad translation. But when Jesus tells a parable, it's a symbolic story. Everything in the story symbolizes something. So here are my questions for you. Here are my questions. Who are you in this story, and what are the talents for you? Who are you in the story, and what are the talents for you? I'm going to ruin the ending. I'm just going to tell you that the master in the story represents Jesus. You probably figured that part out, I'm guessing. Okay. Jesus has left talents in the hands of his servants to do something with them while he is gone. And so he's going to be coming back, he says, to find out what his servants have done with the talents. So who are you in the story, and what are the talents for you? Who are you in the story? Are you the servant who wants to bring joy to the heart of the master? Are you the one who got the 5, the one who got the 2, the one who's thinking about what the master wants done with his stuff? Are you the one who will hear the words, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been responsible with this small amount, now I'm going to give you so much more. Come, let's celebrate together. Are you that one? Or are you someone who just takes the talent and just kind of sits on it? Just hides it, doesn't do much with it because you think it's yours, it doesn't really belong to anyone else, it's yours. Are you that one? Who are you in the story? Who are you? And what are the talents for you? What are the talents? What is it that the master has left with you? We've been talking in this series about the talent being our story, being our hope, being our faith. You have been given faith and hope to invest. What are you doing with it? Are you sharing it? Or are you holding on to it tightly so no one else can get it? But maybe the talents mean something else for you, right? Maybe the talents are physical resources. Maybe it's food or money or clothing. What does it mean to treat those things as if they belong to us, as opposed to treating them as if they belong to the master? What if the talents for you are your abilities? Your skills, the things that you're good at. What do you think the master wants you to do with those things while he's gone? What does he want you to do with them? What if your talent is time? What do you do with your time? Do you share your time or do you hold on to it tightly? You see what I mean? There's many different ways to interpret this. What I want you to do is think about how this story speaks to you. Who are you? Who are you in this story? What are the talents for you, and what are you doing with them? Stewardship Sunday, today, Stewardship Sunday is a day when we make commitments to honor Jesus in the coming year. You know, we make these commitments for two reasons. We make these commitments, number one, in order to grow. If I commit to something new, it gives me a bar to aim for. It helps me grow. But the other reason that we make these commitments is to give God a new avenue to reach people through us. If I'm doing something different, it allows God to work through me to reach new people. I mean, we don't do these commitments for a contest. It's not to see who's best or anything like that, right? I mean, as sheep under the leadership of the great shepherd, that's what this window is about, right? As sheep under the leadership of the great shepherd, we are asked to submit to his authority. And what he asks us to do is follow him. Not just one time, not just on the day you gave your life to him. He wants you to follow him every day. This is true, yes? He wants you to follow him every day. So when we make commitments for next year, our desire is to follow him more closely next year than we did this year. Even if you did a great job this year, our goal is to follow him even more closely next year. Our goal is to use our talents more effectively next year than we did this year. That's why we make commitments. So in your program is the form that we use. Do you guys have these? It's in your program. Get it out. I want you to take a look at it real quick. This is the sheet that we use to make our commitments for 2019. I just want to show you a couple things on this, but I also want to give you a chance. We're going to take a chance today to take an opportunity to fill it out. So you'll notice on this sheet that there's two sections. There's two sections. It's sharing my hope through my story and sharing my hope through my resources, right? Sharing my hope through my story and through my resources. The resource section is at the bottom there. You guys know that God has blessed us with everything we have, right? And we're also aware that God has blessed some of us with much and some of us with not as much. We know that. We know that. He gave 5 talents to some and 2 talents to some and 1 talent to some. And that's true for us. God has given us different amounts. But you guys know the expectation of the master is that we will use whatever we have to honor him. Even if it's a small amount, his expectation is that we will use our blessings to bless others. That's what this section at the bottom, that's what that's about. We have an opportunity to use whatever we have to bless him. So I'm going to invite you to check off as many as apply down there. You know, I mean, the first box is trusting God to provide and increasing my giving by 1%. So, you know, whatever it is that you gave last year in proportion to your income, increase it by 1%, which is not a huge jump. I mean, it really isn't. In the Old Testament, you guys know, in the Old Testament, God's expectation of giving is 10%. He says return 10% as a sign of trust and as a sign of gratitude. The average American churchgoer gives 2%. So this would be a chance to stretch just a little bit and say, I'm going to increase whatever it is by 1%. That's not for everybody. You don't have to do that. The next 3 lines are specific amounts that people want to commit to for the coming year. I don't see these at all, by the way. I don't see these. This is for budgeting reasons, so the church knows kind of what kind of budget to set for next year. But that first line is for the general fund of the church. It's how the general fund's how the church pays its bills, right? How the church pays its staff members, and also how the church funds the vast majority of its ministries. So when people give money to the church, I always encourage them to give to the general fund so that we can do a variety of different ministry. The next line is for the IBM, which is the Improvements, Building, and Maintenance Fund. It's kind of an emergency fund for the church. If the boiler goes out, something like that happens, there's a way for the church to cover that really quick. The last line is for special ministries. If there's a certain ministry that appeals to your heart, you would put what that is and then how much you would want to commit to that for the coming year. Again, this part down here, I wish we didn't even have to list this stuff out. I wish we didn't have to. This is for budgeting purposes. And so if you're filling that out, if you're a family together, just one of you would fill that part out, all right? But that's something that's an opportunity to share our faith through our resources. The part that I care much more about is the top part, sharing our faith through our story. How do you want to become a better steward of your hope this year, your faith this year? You know, the church can help people when we share our resources. We can help people out. We can make a difference in people's lives. You guys know the kingdom of God grows when people share their story. That's how the kingdom grows. So this is a chance to kind of think about that for yourself. So the first line is, I want to share my faith story with X number of people this year, this quarter, this month, whatever it might be. I'm going to share my story. Now you guys, and remember we talked about this last week, sharing your story doesn't mean just giving your testimony. Sharing your faith story means living out your faith, sharing your faith with other people, but being intentional about that. Maybe it's mentioning faith to someone. Maybe it's inviting someone to church. Maybe it's talking about the change that's happened in your life because of Christ. I dare say not very many people do this on a regular basis. So this would be a chance to just commit to that. I want to share my faith with 5 people this year. Whatever it is that you would like to make a commitment to, put that down. That's not for everybody. Again, it's not for everybody. The next line is, I want to share my faith with one person in particular. There's somebody on If there's somebody on your heart, someone in particular that God has put on your heart, this line would be for that, for praying for an opportunity for God to open a door for you to share your faith with that person. And I don't want to know who that person is. You don't have to put their name on there, but I would love to have their initials on there. If you put their initials on there, just their initials, or just some way for me to identify, I'm gonna pray over that person. I'm going to pray that their heart would be open to what God wants to do in their lives this year. I'm going to pray that you would have an opportunity to share God's love with that person. Just put their initials down. The last line is, I'd like to invite God deeper into my story. I want my story to continue to be transformed by Him. I want to develop some aspect of my faith through Bible study or worship or something like that. So mark that down if you want to invite Jesus deeper into your story. My hope is that you would pick something that you're not already doing, something new, right? Because if we don't do anything new, we tend not to grow. But that's up to you. The whole thing is up to you. The whole thing is up to you. This is just an opportunity for us to honor Jesus, to honor His kingdom, to help build up the church. That's what this is, You want to hear something cool, though? You want to hear something cool? Yes? Okay, good. I had asked the leadership of the church, the elected leaders of the church, the people that you elect as leaders of the church, I had asked them if they want to fill out the top portion of this section ahead of time. Almost all of them did. You want to hear something really cool? They have committed to sharing their faith with 65 people this coming year. We're talking about a small handful of people. This is not a ton of people. But these people have committed to sharing their faith with 65 people this coming year. That means 65 people. At least one person every week is going to be exposed to God's love because of people from this church. Isn't that incredible to think about that? What they've committed to. Can you imagine what would happen to our community and our neighborhood if we all followed that example and we committed to sharing our faith with 3 people this year, 5 people this year, whatever it is, and multiple people every week were experiencing God's love because of this church? Wouldn't that be cool? Can you imagine how the world would be different next year if we did that? That's awesome. Okay, one last thing, and then I'm going to give you a moment to fill these out, and you could bring them up. I want to give you a little bit of warning. Don't focus on the way that other people are making commitments this morning. Don't focus on the commitments that other people are making. You look at the guy who was given 5 talents and 2 talents and 1 talent. They weren't looking at the other guys to see what they were doing, right? They focused on their own responsibility, their own work. And we need to do the same thing. Don't focus on other, because the truth is you have no control at all over the way that other people use the resources that they have. And honestly, I mean, just speaking honestly, there are people probably here who are just going to bury their talent. There probably will be some people that bury their talent. There probably are some people who hold on tightly to what they've been given and they don't want to let go. There are people who have no intention at all of sharing their hope, even if God sends someone to them to ask. There are some people that will bury their talent. You cannot allow them to affect the way that you use what has been entrusted to you. You're not responsible for the way that anyone else uses the talents that have been entrusted to them. But listen, guys, you are 100% responsible for handling what has been entrusted to you. And that includes your story. Jesus is not going to ask you how the other people around you used his stuff. He's going to ask you how you used his stuff. I will admit, this is a struggle for me. For me personally, it is. This is a struggle. I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility for the way that other people use God's stuff. I do. I'm just admitting this to you. It sometimes crushes my spirit when I see other people that just don't want to grow. They don't want to let go of what God has given them. They hold so tightly to things that need to be released. They're chasing after the wrong things. It crushes me. And so I'm working really hard right now. I'm working on understanding my limits with that. I'm focusing on controlling the things that I can control and doing the things that I can do. Because I understand how dangerous it is to get wrapped up in other people's commitments. You know, if I don't focus, I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna keep praying for everybody, but I've got to know that I can't make other people's decisions for them, right? And I know that if I don't remind myself of that, it's gonna push me off a spiritual cliff. I'm telling you this for accountability. You can hold me to this now. But I'm also telling you this because I want you to remember this. You're not responsible for the commitments that other people make, but you are responsible for yours. You are a talented group of servants. You are. You're talented. Some of you have been given 5 talents, some 2 talents, some 1 talent, but you are talented. You get to decide what to do with them. But what you do with them is going to determine the response of the master when he comes back. I'm going to invite you to take a moment right now. Jeff's going to play some commitment music for us, whatever that sounds like. And I want you to just take a moment and just look at this sheet and fill out what you want to fill out. Fill out what you want to fill out. And when you're done, you can bring them up to the front. We're going to have some baskets up here at the front. You can just fold it in half. Don't forget to put your name on it, by the way. We need your name on it. Fold it in half and just put it in the basket. And then just go back to your seat. And when we're all done, we're going to pray over these together. And then we'll sing our last song.